to meet you, dear Mr. Terado, in our project, in our journal, World of Martial Arts. And first, my questions to you: why did you start doing martial arts at 17 years old? From what point it was starting?
Well, I mean, I was obviously in high school, and you know, like most kids, right, were influenced by movies and things like that. But you know, I got into Okinawan Goju-Ryu karate, right? So not Filipino martial arts at all. I at that time I've never heard of Filipino martial arts. So you know, I trained for a little while in Okinawan Goju-Ryu karate. Yeah, and then I ran out of money, you know, 'cause I was still in school, and you know, I stopped training martial arts for a while until I got my, you know, like a part-time job, um, and then after that, I just, you know, I tried, you know, other martial arts, you know, until, you know, years later, I finally found my first Filipino martial arts. Um, uh, which was what is it, Illustrissimo, under Master Ray Galang. But I didn't train in that very long either. You know, it's same thing. You know, it's you know, money was always tight when back in the day. So whenever I get a chance, I'll try a new martial art. Um, and then I would leave, and then I'll, you know, when I get some money, I'll try a different one again later. Yeah.
I see. Could you tell me, please, about your teacher, Tukhon Tim Waid? What knowledge did you manage to learn from him?
Sorry, say again. What?
What knowledge did you manage to learn from him?
Oh, okay. Well, obviously, you know, I am learning you know, the martial arts of Peikiti-Tirsia Kali, but more importantly, I learned how to teach under him. You know, he has a very you know, kind of a direct, you know, specific way of teaching. The first time I trained with him, it felt kind of like being in the military, you know, learning from you know, from your you know, your sergeant or your, you know, your trainer, right? Like everything is very straightforward, very simplified, right? And then through him, you know, as I'm training in the art, you know, I'm learning how to, you know, communicate with students and other, you know, fellow martial artists, which, you know, I didn't really learn from other you know, from the other martial arts, you know, or other school that I went to. You know, they are very kind of like traditional, you know, you just, you know, do what I tell you, just, you know, go through the repetitions, right? And with Tim, it's very, you know, eventually became very kind of like conversational, like you and I be talking, and it's you know, it's more like a exchange. Of course, you know, he's instructing you, right? So, you know, but he encourages feedback. So that's what I learned for the most part. You know, again, aside from understanding all the like you know, particulars about the art itself, I learned a lot of the I guess you could say communication skills from him. You know, there's a, you know, there's a saying in our system. You know, you know, was it you was it learn to teach, teach to learn. So that was pretty much encouraged from the very beginning. Of course, you know, I'm kind of old school, so I didn't take that into, you know, what do you call it? I was thinking, you know, you should, you know, train for several years before you can start teaching people. But with him, it's like, no, start teaching as soon as you're able, so you can learn. You can learn all the different ways you can do drills or just communicating, in general with people who are new to your art, right? Because not everybody receives information or processes information the same way, so that's one of the things I learned is, figuring out how to deliver the same information in different ways, right? Because like if you and I were training, I might show it to you or communicate it to you a certain way, but because right, you come from a different culture and we have a slight language, what do you call it, difference, right? That I have to figure out a slightly more creative way to deliver to you, which actually, coincidentally, that's what I learned when the first time I taught a seminar there in Ukraine, like several years ago. There's a Peikiti-Tirsia group in Chernihiv, barely spoke English, but after a weekend there, I was able to teach them many of the fundamentals of the system, and now they're thriving under their group leader over there. So yeah, I credit much to Tukhon Tim Waid, my teaching ability, I guess.
You have practiced karate, Gong Fu, Muay Thai, Capoeira, yes, and others martial arts. Why did you decide to leave them and start doing Peikiti-Tirsia?
As like I mentioned, I didn't want to really leave per se. It's just I couldn't afford it at the time. I will try because I was going to school. I was going to art school, and I only worked like a part-time job, so I'm only really able to afford, to pay for like my car, food, school supplies, right? Tuition, things like that, right? I had student loan, but I was a full-time student. But yeah, I've always liked martial arts, so if I'm able to save a little money, and then there's a martial art that I'm curious about, and I think, okay, I can afford to take classes, then I will take the class, and usually it's a martial art or school that's like relatively close proximity to where I am. So for instance, when I was when I trained very little bit in Muay Thai, it was because there was literally a gym just 2 blocks away from where I was working at that time. So I'm like, oh, right after work, I can just walk over here, train for about an hour, and then I go home. Same thing. When I did capoeira, same thing. I had a friend who introduced me to capoeira, and I'm like, oh, this is a great way to lose weight, because it's a very physical, very acrobatic. So I did that for a bit, and then unfortunately, because I left that job and I relocated somewhere else, that I ended up having to leave the capoeira group. I didn't pursue it again because I was again a new place, new city, new everything. I wanted to try something else. So pretty much, like, I think after that I started leaning more towards Filipino martial arts. But yeah, uh, you know, it depended on, you know, how much I could afford at the time. But priority first, right? You gotta pay rent, you gotta pay your bills. Unfortunately, martial arts came like second. You know.
What is the fundamental difference between Escrima, Silat, and Pekiti-Tirsia? I know many people who is confusing all these three types.
Yeah, I would say culture. You know, when I first started doing Filipino martial arts, a lot of the confusion was mainly like the difference between Arnis, Kali, or Eskrima. They say, oh, they're all different. Yeah, they're all different, but they're really just they're different terms, you know, for to describe you know, the predominant martial art in the Philippines involving, you know, and it involves sticks, right? Sticks and swords and knives. Arnis seems to have come more from more derived from Spanish. So is Eskrima, I guess, right? Like Arnis or Arnis de Mano means, I think it means armor of the hand. That's Spanish. Eskrima is just esgrimir, right? Fencing.
Spanish fencing.
Yeah. Right. Kali is the more controversial term because there seems to be no real root term for that. They say, oh, you know, it's derived from the word kalis, which is the blade. Others say it's derived from the Hindu god of destruction, Kali. So I don't know. You know, from what I understand, it's a term that a newer term created by these masters that had left the Philippines and went overseas, and they wanted to differentiate their art from, I guess, the you know, the more common like Eskrima or Arnis styles, right? So they started using the term Kali. Silat is what do you call it? So we call it Southeast Asian, right? Terminology. From what I understand, somebody said, you know, pretty much like the further south you go, or what the Muslims use, they use the term Kali more. Sorry, not Kali. They use the term Silat versus anything else, because that's the, you know, that comes from the language that they use, right? And for the most part, Silat seems to be more derived from animals, whereas you know, the FMA systems of you know, Eskrima, Kali, Arnis, whatever you want to call it, it's more, you know, strictly from fighting, you know, another person, right? So it's not an animal style. Although I imagine they probably borrow, you know, certain movements from Silat and not realize it comes from animal expression, right? But that's pretty common too, right? In the archipelago, there's a lot of crossbreeding of martial arts. You know, I mean, there's, you know, look at there's another martial art called Kung Tao. Have you heard? I'm sure you've heard of it, right? That's very influenced by Chinese martial arts. I think from from the Fujian province of China. So, you know, you got traders, sailors, or, you know, anyone that travels to like Southeast Asia, and they would, you know, either fight or exchange, you know, knowledge by teaching, and of course, depending on you know, who they learned it from, they would take that the term, right? So there's Kuntao, there's Silat, all kinds of, there's a bunch of other martial arts too that I'm sure that has a different name that we've never really heard of, but it's like, oh yeah, it's been around for hundreds of years, but it's never been like documented. So,
If I may ask you,
yeah.
which basic principles did you achieve in Jeet and then Inosanto Lacoste Cali? I saw you also teach these two martial arts.
Yeah, I was training that. I trained that prior to my, I guess, switching over to Peikiti-Tirsia. At the time, Jeet was one of those martial arts that they're not easy to find. So when I first moved to California, and I found a school, about half hour from where I work. So naturally, I need to go check it out, right? And there's a Jeet Kune Do school, and in it they also, because they come from the Inosanto lineage directly, then they teach the Inosanto blend of Kali, right? And as a lot of people know by now, Tukhon Tim Inosanto had like over 30 plus teachers, and his art is comprised of all these different styles, right? Or he borrows a lot of different principles from different styles. One of them is Peikiti-Tirsia Kali. So when I was training with my Sifu back then, whenever we do a certain drill, he would say, "Oh, it comes from this art." This drill comes from Serrada. This drill come from what do you call it? Lacoste. And then he would say, and then this drill comes from Peikiti-Tirsia. And I guess at the time we were doing a lot of drills that came from Peikiti-Tirsia, so he keeps mentioning Peikiti-Tirsia. So I'm like, I started getting like really curious, about this particular system. And then lo and behold, there's somebody teaching Peikiti-Tirsia close to where I lived also. But he was very like low key, he didn't really advertise. He had a website, and all he had was like some photos and email, and that's it. And I had to contact. He was my first real teacher in Peikiti-Tirsia. I had to contact him at least 4 times before he finally responded. But yeah, while I was training in Jeet Kune Do, I think that's when I really started to get an idea of the camaraderie of how people interact in Filipino martial arts when they're training compared to like the other arts. Like it felt very much more kind of what's the word, communal, kind of like in Capoeira. It's like you're all friends, and you're all just kind of playing, so it's kind of like that when I was training in Jeet Kune Do and Inosanto blend. It's a little bit more serious, right? Because there's weapons, but it's a lot of laughing, and I made a lot of friends. I made friends there a lot quicker than in most other places, right? It was nice to finally kind of get a hands-on experience with Bruce Lee's learning Bruce Lee's training principles, and then why he did certain things, and how he trained them, right? To an extent, right? I mean, you know, you know, from what I understand, like no one who trains Jeet Kune Do follows the same exact template, because you're supposed to, right? You know, do your own research and you know, learn to incorporate what works for you, right? And then kind of put aside the things that kind of are not really like beneficial for your training. So that's one of the things I kind of learned when I was doing Jeet Kune Do, is just learning to, I guess, what do you call it? Understand the information that I'm getting, instead of you know, the old school way, just you know, just kind of repeat what you're told, right? And then when you're asked like, why are you doing that, you're like, I don't know, sensei said to do this, so I just do this, right? In Jeet Kune Do, they encourage you to think about what it is you're doing and why, right? And then figure out a more efficient way of doing it. So you know, so eventually when I switched over to Peikiti-Tirsia primarily, I kind of saw the same mentality, I guess, the same mindset, you know, being able to you know, dissect what you're doing, you know, analyze it, and then you know, capitalize on the aspects that you can, like, you know, you can do, or the information you can absorb, you know, and then kind of just build on that, versus like, okay, memorize these sets of movements, you get the conditioning, whatever, and then you know, and then you just kind of do it like that, right? Like everything you do, you kind of think about it, and then, you know, like, well, why is it, why are we chambering? Why is it, you know, why are there strikes like this? Why this? Why that? Right? And you know, you kind of I don't know. At least for me, I'm able to retain the information better. You know, so that's something I was able to take from Jeet Kune Do into my training, to my current training now. Yeah.
How is your school different from all other schools of Peikiti-Tirsia?
You mean specifically Tukhon Tim Waid's school, or my school?
Yes, your own school, your own technique, basically, from others.
I guess I'm really not that different. I think I would say, for the most part, I'm generally very informal, as you can probably tell. Right now, I'm not very formal. You know, I have a tendency to make jokes during class a lot. I have a very kind of non-linear approach. So how I normally teach is, you know, I'll do something with you and see how you do with that, and then I figure out like what else I can add or take away, right? Sometimes I overload people with information, and then if I see that they're starting to kind of struggle, then I dial it back. So I don't have a set way of doing things other than sticking with the curriculum that Tukhon Tim Waid taught us, right? So, you know, I start with that, but then I kind of how do you say, freelance a little bit, you know, with the information, because for me, one of the things I learned is, you know, the student, if they're not enjoying what they're doing, they're not going to train, you know, they're not going to practice. So I find ways to again deliver the information to them, that's simple enough, but also make it, you know, interesting and fun, without without deviating too much from the curriculum, because at the end of the day, I am still teaching Tukhon Tim Waid's specific curriculum, but I'm doing it my way so that it encourages students to train or practice in between classes. And again, it's very kind of conversational, when the way I teach, that way when we get to like the more intense parts of any exercise, or when we're sparring, don't feel like I just surprised them with this new information. It's I've shown it to them, it was done this way, and then they kind of seeing it in a kind of a slightly different presentation, but it's not a completely different information. So yeah, I can't really say it's really that different from how other teachers do it. My main thing is like I said, I'm kind of a clown sometimes. I like to make jokes, and because right, when you're training, sometimes it gets everybody you get tired and all that, and then or it's just a little too intense, so I would lighten the mood by making a joke. And then it's back to business class, right? Okay, back to business, blah 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 blah. So yeah, I strike a balance between being kind of a serious teacher, but also like the joke, the class joker, a little bit.
How is, in your opinion, is looking philosophy of Peikiti-Tirsia? Which books students must read?
Well, there's no Peikiti-Tirsia book, right?
Why?
So, I mean, I think some people are writing them now, but there's no specific. I mean, at least for me, I don't prescribe any specific book, really. I leave it up to the student to research on their own. I mean, there are other FMA books, obviously, out there. I can't think of any on the top of my head right now, because I haven't read any in the recently. But a lot of the books that I would say people should read have to do more with like I don't know, like I guess more on the philosophy side of things, like something, books about stoicism, things like that. Not so much books about like other martial arts, unless unless you want to research that specific martial art, right? And there happens to be a book for it. But yeah, right now I can't think of any specific book per se. But yeah, I don't prescribe any specific reading material.
Why not book about fencing?
Sure, you can read books about fencing. Us in particular, Tukhon Tim Waid encourages us to read about and research. What's his name? George Silver. Was a medieval or European sword master, George Silver, because he has some philosophies about sword fighting that aligns with how we train in blade fighting. But yeah, I would imagine like like I have students who are also practitioners in HEMA, so they read like books on European swordsmanship quite a bit. and they often would mention things from what they've read when we're doing something in class in our system. They might go, oh, that's like the, you know, that was, you know, that's like the, you know, this theory from this book. And I just kind of nod because I haven't read that book, you know. But it's nice that they are, you know, they're reading on their own, you know, books like this, you know, books on, like you said, fencing, you know, yeah, books on fencing, books on, I know there are publications on like Spanish swordsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, myself, I once in a while I look into like what do you call it? Italian, like Italian style fencing. Mainly, you know, mainly because you know, I've seen some videos, you know, and then I'm curious about, you know, like where it came from, and because it looks very similar to some of the things that we do. But of course, you know, right, it's a very different style and culture altogether. The weapons are completely different, but there's a lot of similarities that I see. Excuse me, and I'll get curious about it. You know, so um, and as we all know, right, everybody, you know, the human body can only move so many different ways. So naturally, like when you look at when you read something or see a video of another art, you might go, oh, that looks like something we're doing, right? So because yeah, two arms. You know?